Hi everybody. Welcome to Habitat for Humanity, Seattle King and Kitts County Advocacy 101 training. This is the Women Build edition, and we're super excited to have you join us. We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. I am Tapua, advocacy organizer.
And I'm Madison. I'm the repairs program manager.
All right. Okay. So the Advocacy 101 is just a quick crash course on the basics of advocacy. We're going to start with some background information on Habitat for Humanity, and then we'll look at defining advocacy, and we'll go into some practical examples of how to be an advocate.
Okay, so just a little bit of background on Habitat for Humanity International, and also our affiliate, Seattle King and Kittitas County. In 1942, Habitat started out as something called Koinonia Farms. It was a pecan farm in Americus, Georgia, and it was founded on the principles of pacifism and racial integration during Jim Crow South. So that was kind of a big deal. Everyone on the community pooled their resources into a common treasury, and treated everyone as equals regardless of race or class. Hop forward to 1969, and that same farm instituted a low-cost, interest-free building program that eventually constructed about 200 houses. And then in 1976, Millard and Linda Fuller, who were Koinonia residents, founded Habitat for Humanity International. Um, in 1986, our affiliate was formed as Habitat for Humanity King County. And then in 2021, we celebrated our 35th anniversary as an affiliate. And we just keep on growing.
Awesome. Okay, so this is our vision statement here at Habitat. We envision a world where everyone has a safe, decent, and affordable place to live. So all of the work that each of us do here at Habitat is driven by this vision. And this is the kind of world that we want to see.
Okay, so let's get down to it and let's discuss what an advocate is versus what a decision maker is. So advocacy really involves the promoting of the interests or causes of someone or a group of people. So an advocate is someone who is involved in promoting those interests or causes. Advocacy also helps people find their voice. You can advocate for yourself, for those causes, or for other people, and you can provide a space for them to use their voices. Um, Anyone can be a decision maker. People hold positions of power on city councils, planning boards, committees, nonprofit leaders like the one that we work in, and other government and business leaders as well. The difference is, though, that advocates can influence decision makers, and decision makers' power doesn't exist on its own. It's the individual voices and collective power that really do make a difference. So the difference between an advocate and a decision maker is that an advocate can use their voice and their actions to influence those decision makers who are in those positions of power.
All right. So we're going to look at some reasons why advocacy is important. So first and foremost, like with anything, the more people talk about an issue, the more traction it gets, and the more the fire spreads, and the more you get to make people know that there is an issue to begin with. And the more people are talking, the harder it is to ignore it. So advocacy creates engagement and brings awareness to issues. Number two, we like the saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And advocacy gives you an opportunity to be at the forefront of an issue. You get a seat at the table. So you get to directly make your voice heard and your concerns known, and you get to have a say. For number three, we're going to see in a little bit how community power can really play a big role in advocacy. But the important thing to know here is that there is power and strength in numbers. And the more voices they are speaking out against an issue, again, just the harder it is to ignore it. For number four, advocacy can have far-reaching effects. So a lot of social issues are interconnected. Advocating for affordable housing can also bring about positive changes in, say, climate policies or credit policies. And not only that, but advocacy can be fun. Advocacy can be anything from like phone banking to lobby days or canvassing, and there's a bunch of ways to make that interesting and fun.
Speaking of ways to make advocacy actions interesting and fun, let's talk about the two different types of advocacy. So when we're talking about advocacy actions, they fall into two buckets primarily. The first is inside advocacy, and the second is outside advocacy. Inside advocacy is going to be that direct action to those decision makers. So things like testifying at public hearings, writing letters, or calling your decision makers, meeting in person with them if they have some time available, meeting with their staff, because those people really do have a direct line to their ear and can really make an impact. Also, serving on a council, board, or other advisory group, your voice definitely has a space there. And last but not least, for inside advocacy, there is always the option of a lawsuit, but it is a little bit lengthy and can sometimes be a bit involved of the inside advocacy options. And then the second bucket that advocacy actions fall into is going to be outside advocacy. This is more of that indirect pressure where you're building support and putting indirect pressure on decision makers that way. So this is going to look really familiar. It's going to look like things like op-eds or articles or working with journalists to get them to write those. Holding educational events and trainings, kind of like this one. When you see people protesting in the streets or at different buildings and with signs, that's a form of outside advocacy. It might be indirect pressure, but it's still putting pressure on them and trying to affect those decision makers. Things like hashtag advocacy with social media campaigns, the action alerts that you'll get from the advocacy team here at Habitat, coalition building where groups are coming together for a shared cause. That's all outside advocacy. And then really a very important form of it is just researching topics and sharing that information with the people around you. Okay, so now that we've talked about the different types of advocacy with inside and outside advocacy, I want to share a little story with you about local advocacy at work. So the woman that you see in this photo here, this is Toya Thomas in the middle, and then Elamika James and Michelle Dozier on each side of her. These are actually some pretty powerful women. So Toya Thomas was a single mother like a lot of other folks. A group of mothers in their apartment complex in Renton were served eviction notices, not because they did anything wrong, not because they weren't making their rent payments. It was only because the apartment complex didn't want to rent to those who were using Section 8 vouchers for their rent payments, which is a little bit silly because they're making the payments either way. But they also noticed that the only people getting these eviction notices, well, not the only ones, but primarily it was Black individuals, Black women, majority. So they called it out for what it was, which is proxy discrimination. They were using this income discrimination to also racially discriminate against people. So Toya and a bunch of other people in this community worked together alongside groups like the Tenants Union, Northwest Justice Project, the Coalition on Homelessness, and Low Income Housing Alliance. And they brought this issue to the city of Renton. And the city of Renton's city council passed an emergency ordinance that prohibited this kind of discrimination. And that measure is still in place today. And it even includes things like misdemeanor status and jail time for landlords who are evicting folks just because they're receiving governmental assistance. So that's a pretty good example of ways that you can use both inside advocacy and outside advocacy. So direct and indirect pressure to make change in your community.
All right. So here we have our legislative agenda. These are our priority policies for this year that we're working on. And just to take you through the three of them. So any exclusionary zoning, you're not aware, Washington has a really long history with exclusionary zoning. We have a long history of using race-based restrictions and redlining maps that have kept the BIPOC community out of neighborhoods that were predominantly white. And this limits the affordability of housing and also restricts the amount of homes that are available to marginalized groups. So we are working on getting policies put in place that will end the practice of exclusionary zoning and open up communities to alternative home options like duplexes and triplexes and other missing middle type housing. And then as far as investing in the entire housing continuum goes, we drastically need to make more deliberate investments in investing in the entire housing continuum. So we are supporting policies and funding decisions that will incentivize developers to build affordable home ownership options in all communities across Washington, and for supporting Black home ownership opportunities. The lowest home ownership rate of any racial group in the United States is that of Black people. And currently, the average Black family in Seattle is 33% less likely to own their home than a white family. And this is just because of policies at the local, state, and federal government that have prohibited households of color from having equal access to things like homeownership and financing and neighborhood development, all of which are made easily available to white households. So we're looking at increasing Black home ownership by getting rid of deliberate and institutionalized racial obstacles to homeownership. So those are our priorities, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how you can help us with these. If you would like to try your hand at being an advocate for affordable housing, we've got a super easy way for you. So we've got two ways. You can either scan the QR code and that will take you to our Action Center where you can sign up and you'll be able to take action on that page. Alternatively, you can text the word habitat to 231-HABITAT, which is 231-422-4828. By joining our action alerts, that just gives you access to when we have campaigns going on and other easy and cool advocacy actions that you can help out with. These action alerts are how we communicate with and persuade our decision makers to make changes and policies that help with affordable housing. So it's really important that we get as many people on there as possible. Other than that, we've pretty much come to the end of our training. It was nice and short, and we thank you for tuning in.